Right now, it's Friday afternoon, and somewhere there's an elementary school classroom getting ready to be let out for dismissal. Now, if you can picture this classroom, you can probably imagine children excited, jumping off the walls, throwing paper balls, just filled and eager moments to just get into their weekend. Even the teacher's excited right now because she's finally getting a break from some of her students. But in this one particular classroom, there's a trio of students in the back: Josh, Anthony, and Jamel. Josh asks Anthony a question and says, "Hey, Anthony, what you gonna do this weekend?" He says, "Well, my dad's gonna take me to go play football. What about you?" Josh says, "Well, my mom's gonna take me food shopping." And then they turn to Jamel and they ask Jamel, "What are you gonna do, Jamel?" And Jamel, "Leave me alone. Don't talk to me right now." And they look at each other puzzled, not understanding why Jamel is upset right now. But little do they know, Jamel is actually sad. He is sad. Not to mention, he's the most disrespectful student and the most rebellious. But he's sad. Y'all want to know why he's sad? Well, we'll get back to that. Did you know that 40% of all African American males who drop out of high school usually end up in prison or on probation? Now, these same children were once the kids in elementary school and middle school who someone gave up on. And these children all have one common threat, and that threat is neglect. Whether the neglect came from being ostracized by their peers in their community because they didn't want to conform to the things that they were doing, or without knowing, a teacher may have even neglected them and caused this kid to just stray away from them. But for a child to experience the neglect from a parent is possibly one of the most traumatic experiences that a child would ever encounter. Now, when you think about these children, intentionally, we are forcing them to dream when their lives are nightmares. We're expecting them to be attentive in class when they have not learned any structure in their homes. Without being aware, we are asking these children to perform a balancing act between a fictional, alleviating society that has been presented to them versus their traumatic realities. Now, back to Jamel. Jamel's sad because it's a possibility that he may not eat this weekend. He just had his last meal during his lunch period, and he's hurt by that. And not to mention, he gets to see his friends Josh and Anthony get picked up in vehicles by their parents with open arms. And Jamel, on the other hand, has to go get his other two siblings, and they have to take a bus to the other side of town with expectations of their mom even being there to open the door. His friend Anthony has the pleasure of going home and saying, "Oh, Mom, I'm hungry. What are we going to eat tonight? Oh, I made a pot of spaghetti for you." When Jamel attempts to tell his mom, "Mom, I'm hungry. What are we going to eat?" she yells at him and shuts him down and says, "Go find something to eat." So now Jamel has to go find something, not just for himself, but him and his two other siblings. His friend Josh could go home and say, "Hey, Dad, I learned so much in school today." And his father just encourages him. Jamel attempts to tell his mom, "Hey, Mom, a doctor came to the school today, and she said we could be whatever we want to be." She quickly shuts him down and says, "You're not going to be nothing but just like your father, a drug addict, an alcoholic, and an unemployed bum." While his friend Anthony has the pleasure of playing a video game with violence in it, his mom could say, "Hey, Anthony, turn that down." While Jamel and his other siblings have to duck down to the sounds of gunshots in their backgrounds. Now, for an average person who was to experience something as traumatic as these children are experiencing, they would seek out psychological help. They would go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And these children are lost, undeveloped. They turn to other methods to fill this void of emptiness of being neglected. They turn to drugs for therapeutic measures because they can't afford the therapy. They turn to gangs just to be affiliated with that camaraderie and having someone there to be on their back. And they turn to the streets just to escape these unstable homes. These children act out in school, and those are cries for attention. Cries, because school is the one place where there's some type of support for them there, with expectations that you could do whatever you want to do if you come to school. We have your back. Now, these children are faced with so much growing up in the inner city. Poverty, neglect, drugs, violence. These kids see this on an everyday basis. Now for me, growing up in the Bronx, New York, me and some of my peers experienced some of these same traumatic things that Jamel may have experienced. And it grew to the point that it became a norm, that if something traumatic was not happening in our lives, we didn't know how to function. Poverty teaches you so many negative things as opposed to the positive things. And I'm a firm believer that what you see is what you will be. So now I've taken an initiative to giving back. I'm gonna be a positive role model for these children because I didn't have a positive role model. Now, as an intervention specialist, I see this on a daily. I see children crying because they don't know what's gonna happen when they go home at night. I see children scared because they don't know if their father will ever come back and help them. Could you imagine having to answer a question to a child and he says, "Why doesn't my father love me?" Why doesn't my father love me? But intentionally, we are forcing these kids to dream when their lives are nightmares. We're expecting them to be attentive in class when they have not learned any structure in their homes. Without being aware, we are forcing these children to perform a balancing act between this fictional, alleviating society that has been presented to them versus their traumatic realities. Now, today, I challenge you all. If you have any preconceived assumptions about how young black men should carry themselves or how they have been carrying themselves, let's move this thought from your mind right now. Take this challenge right now to remove it from your thoughts. Think about how you can impact somebody or how you have impacted somebody. Collectively, as a whole, we can all make change in somebody, working together for a better cause. Now, as I dismiss you from here today, what will you do different? That's a question I want you to take away with you, because they forced me to dream when my life was a nightmare. They expected me to be attentive, but I didn't learn structure in my home. Without being aware, they taught me how to perform a balancing act between a fictional, alleviating society versus my traumatic reality. Thank you.